Hey everyone, I'm back. The final episodes of Season 4 have just been released, so I'm here to review the entire season as a whole. I've been watching each episode on its release day, which is unusual for me since I normally wait until all of them are out so I can binge watch. However, I noticed a drastic change in the uploading speed, so I decided it would be fine to watch each episode as it came out. Anyways, here's my review. So obviously this is the first episode following Remnant War, which means everything is back to normal. The start of the episode kicks off with a recap of their first 3 months after they won. I enjoy these types of recaps, so this was enjoyable. We come to find out that Freddy and Foxy are now celebrities and have fans begging them for pictures. If only they knew how much of a bitch Freddy truly was, they probably wouldn't want pictures with him. But back on track, Freddy and Foxy promise to not abuse their powers, which I find respectable. Straight to the point though, this episode was a fun comedy episode. There wasn't much I can take away from it. I think Toy Bonnie trying to cook Donald is a funny concept and all, but it's just making Toy Bonnie dumber than before. After all that time and the battles with Springtrap saving the world, he's still as dumb as ever, maybe even more so now. And Bonnie is right with him. Bonnie used to be quite respectable, as I've mentioned before, but they made him stupid as some sort of gag, which sucks because he was likable before. Also, Foxy and Candy are being very passive-aggressive towards each other. This might lead to a potential beef.
You know, I didn't even know that was a joke. Big paparazzi. That was just like a part of the crowd. Who are you again?
Also, after all that went down in the Fingrels and Remnant War with Puppet and Stormy, they kind of ruined all that build-up with the scene of them in this episode. Well, maybe not ruined, but him forgetting her again and her being disappointed that he doesn't remember her has already happened in Remnant War. And we do not need to see that again because it takes away from their relationship, I feel like. Maybe it's just me. Overall, not much to complain about with this episode besides what I mentioned. It's fun, maybe a little boring at times. Nothing crazy, which is what I expect after a 2-season-long apocalypse that they just went through. But yeah, decent little episode. Election day kicks off with Bonnie abusing a cat. He probably thought it was Vanny. Mickey was apparently mayor before, and now his term is ending. He's running for re-election and is going against a man named George Walker. An old man that is very vague about what he's going to do as mayor. He says he's going to cut work hours and improve customer service, which I'm surprised no one questioned how in the hell he was going to do that since he provided no examples of what he will actually do as mayor. But the town being quick to want these changes, they all want George Walker as their new mayor. There's a new chef at the pizza place named Antonio, and he's basically the replacement for Vanny's job, and is pretty rude to them. To get it out of the way, I will talk about the Chica and Freddy conflict that's going on in this episode. Chica is mad at Freddy for always hanging out with Vanny and taking shots with her as a celebration, which ended up with them sleeping in the same bed. I feel silly watching stuffed animals involved in all this relationship drama. This kind of feels outplaced for the show. And didn't Chica and Freddy's relationship just begin? Why are they already fighting? This show has a trend of destroying relationships just for shock value. And Freddy sleeping and drinking with Vanny feels wrong. I think Chica is in the right, which again means Freddy is back to his antics. On the bright side, these arguments throughout the episode were entertaining to say the least. But anyway, back to the main plot points of the episode. I can't hear anything that's going on in this scene. George Walker wins as mayor, and immediately installs a new robot system to replace every job in Fazbear Hills. I wasn't sure why at the time, but it basically makes it so no one is going to have money anymore since no one is working. I just wasn't sure what the goal here was, but the town was outraged. I guess I get why everyone is mad, but the Fazbears are making it seem like he murdered someone with how angry they were. They made George Walker seem like this horrible guy. But long story short, they get everyone to sign a petition to do a revote for the election. I like this little montage scene, but the part with Officer Greg is so dragged. George Walker is furious and lets himself into the Fazbear's home. He finds out that he just lost his entire family over what he was doing as mayor. I will say that I enjoy this little George Walker backstory. It's a good start to him as a character for the show and a villain. From my understanding, all the jobs in only Fazbear Hills were being taken, but apparently there's a robot president, which makes no fucking sense. Anyway, Mickey wins, George Walker gets thrown out to the dump, and bumps into the season's villain Theodore. After Theodore drops a book with his plan to kill the Fazbears and Walker picks it up, the episode ends. I like where this is heading. Overall, this episode was entertaining and a good start to the storyline. I had my issues with certain parts, but it was a solid episode in my opinion. This episode takes off with Theodore in his little hideout looking for his notebook and George Walker following him to return it. George Walker wants revenge, so he wants in for this plan that Theodore was cooking. Theodore goes from saying this is his revenge and his plan to saying that he needs George Walker's help the very next line. Not very good dialogue for that part, but I'll let it slide. Point is, Theodore and Walker team up to kill the Fazbears and help Theodore explore the multiverse. I like this team up and it works well for the season. The Barnabys advertised Freddy being a cameo on their show without calling him first, but they did promise him a cameo in Remnant War beforehand, so I'm not mad at it. But Freddy is finally going on his favorite show, and he even offers to split his $1 million evenly with all his friends, which I gotta hand it to him. Freddy took a W here, but after he offered the money, Toy Freddy pretty much said, "I'm out this bitch." He announces that he's tired of living in a big household like this, which makes sense because of the fact that he wanted to live on the streets by himself instead of at the shelter with all the other homeless people. It makes sense for his character. And then he proposes to Puppet and asks her to move out with him. I honestly forgot they were in a relationship if I'm being real. But she says yes, and they get set to move out immediately. Freddy really offered them his money out of kindness and they dip right away. A little while later, we are met with a Bonnie and Vanny argument. This relationship was doomed from the start, to be honest, when they completely botched it with the physical abuse from Bonnie. They were a good couple for quite literally one episode. The argument was about how Bonnie jokes about the abuse and thinks it's no big deal, which I see where Vanny is coming from. And then to put the cherry on top for how bad of a character Bonnie is becoming, he quite literally slaps Vanny a second time, leading to their breakup. By the way, this was right after Bonnie fucking proposes to Vanny after slapping her a second time. Like I said earlier in this review, this show seems to love botching relationships for pure shock value. Vanny expresses that she wishes that she stayed with Freddy, which I don't like because they are supposed to be over, but now it seems like they are leading them in the direction of being with each other again. With Chica and Freddy arguing, and the Bonnie breakup. Freddy has to play a racist, homophobic, and sexist character on his favorite show. And the plot twist is the fact that the Barnabys are honestly assholes and have a toxic work environment. And Mr. Barnaby throws real punches at Freddy in their scene together. I think the parts with Freddy working on the show are entertaining though. And then El Chip receives a call from Theodore. This scene was probably one, if not my favorite scene of the episode. It was tense and well done. It made sense too. And then Walker kidnaps him. Great scene. They notice that he's missing and then it cuts to El Chip being taken to Theodore's hideout. Theodore explains angrily that he kidnapped him because of the betrayal and the Fingrels. He's basically making El Chip's death the most brutal by torturing him and making him a slave before he dies. El Chip is freaking out and then it ends. So far, I think Theodore's a pretty good villain. He seems to be a Joker type of villain who laughs a lot. There wasn't much more of George Walker in this episode. I would have liked a little more from him, but that's alright. This episode was good. I think the Vanny and Bonnie breakup made sense, but none of the previous events in that argument should have happened in the first place. Freddy's plot points of him being on the show were good, but it shines a bad light on his favorite show. Toy Freddy and Puppet moving out and getting married was very sudden, and happened out of nowhere. There was really no build-up, especially considering I forgot they were even together. But I can't say it doesn't make sense or doesn't work. I think it's a fine idea that they are moving out. Good episode, though. This episode, we see mostly a different perspective of what's currently going on. George Walker is missing, and same with El Chip. So we see what the government is doing to solve this for most of the episode. They interview each of the Fazbears, and the only one that was actually paying attention was Toy Freddy, who actually gave some information. Although, not sure why he didn't say anything to the Fazbears beforehand when they were looking for him. Walker uses the resources he had as mayor to find information about the multiverse remnant, and finds out about a brother that the creator of Remnant has, but as they plan this out, the president and Frosty find his hideout, which Theodore forces El Chip to kill them against his will. El Chip is truly going through it right now. Toy Freddy and Puppet move out for good now. And that was the last we saw of them this season. Toy Bonnie's friend. And one of the people from the scammer group has a random heart attack, which as I was watching was quite confused. It was just so sudden. And then we get some good character moments from both Bonnie and Foxy finally. At this point I realized Foxy was kind of out of the loop this season. But good scene right here. It ends off with Theodore, Walker, and El Chip going out to visit the brother of the creator for Remnant. This episode was a shorter one, but still solid. Not really any flaws in this one. The story's building up nice, and it had some pretty great scenes in here. Volume 2. Like I said before, I was watching these as they were released, so I was excited for this to come out. We start off with a scene of El Chip and Toy Bonnie bonding. I remember Toy Bonnie being the one by El Chip's side when he died, so I guess these two are close. Mickey goes on in the new scene and screams at the end. The characters in this show love to scream. Theodore is shown to be with George Walker, leading the public to believe he had something to do with him being missing. The Fazbears are suspicious of Theodore because of El Chip's relationship with him, and Walker most likely being kidnapped by Theodore recently as well. Theodore visits Antonio, who is revealed as the brother, and is beat to near death for the location of the multiverse remnant. It seems El Chip is starting to accept his situation and even instigates another conflict with Antonio.
He called you crazy, Theodore. Are you gonna take that?
Which I will say doesn't really make sense, but I guess it's just because El Chip has learned to adapt and might want to get on Theodore's good side. Mickey is the new president, but they are talking about Giraffe in this scene like they know she's dead. Because on the news they only announced she was missing. Although they never mentioned that she's dead in their conversation, they are talking like she is. Maybe it's just me. They visit Sharky, revealing he is going to survive and be out of the hospital the next day, causing them to walk past Antonio, who is also in the hospital from the beating. He is not happy to see them. He reveals that he's angry that his brother got no credit for the world being saved, and reveals where El Chip currently is, which is with Theodore. He reveals he gave the location of the multiverse remnant recipe to Theodore, which freaks him out, and they need to get there fast before Theodore gets it. Antonio gives them the location, although hesitated since he understandably can't really trust anyone right now. Olaf spit on Sharky.
What the f is the big idea? Go kill yourself!
Wow. The disrespect, am I right? We see another tense scene with Foxy and Candy. Basically, Foxy kicks her out. There is definitely beef going on here. Foxy and Freddy argue on if they should fly to the recipe or walk with their entire group, and they settle on everyone going. The multiverse is at stake because Antonio reveals it's the most powerful substance ever. I'm enjoying everything in the episode so far, very entertaining. The story is getting good. Mickey has confirmation that Theodore has kidnapped the missing people and is after multiverse remnant, so he reports it on the news, but mistakenly has Sneech film. This scene was funny in my opinion and wasn't too dragged like most Andrew Plush gag scenes. It's revealed that George Walker used to be a crack addict.
Hey, don't diss crack addicts. I used to be one.
Interesting. Long story short, they find the recipe, and George Walker needs to research where to get the ingredients. They really love finding ways to shove this man down our throats, don't they? They start heading out to look for ingredients. The Fazbears were too late to find the recipe, probably because they were too busy buying SpongeBob ice creams instead of trying to get there. So they call up Antonio, and he remembers the chrome crystals location. So they try and get to at least that ingredient before Theodore so they can't make the remnant. And then Toy Bonnie gets a call that Sharky is dead. I think this is the start of a good build-up for Toy Bonnie, considering how dumb and immature he's been the entire series. El-Chip has to kill everyone in a lab and shoot a baby, which causes both George Walker and El-Chip to consider trying to leave the team. I like this moment. It shows that George Walker is truly not as evil as his partner Theodore, who likes killing for the fun of it. George simply wants revenge on the Fazbears. Theodore shoots George Walker in his chest as a threat, so they both stay on the team and don't risk anything. I think El-Chip can easily take down Theodore himself. Theodore is clinically insane and would not stand a chance. Toy Bonnie begs for Foxy and Freddy to try and use their super remnant to revive Sharky, but Freddy reveals that his version of the remnant does not include the ability to revive, and he hasn't fully explored his powers yet. I like that fact, and I hope we get to see scenes later on of them trying to reach their full potential with their powers. And I like the fact that there's consequences, and they can't just immediately revive someone when they die. At the end, they reunite with El-Chip and come face to face with Theodore and George Walker. Overall, this episode was pretty great. Best one so far. I think the story is getting better and better. Another scene with Toy Bonnie and El-Chip. Nice little scene on the beach. We go right back in where the last episode ended off. I like this beginning scene a lot. They want answers on why Theodore wants them dead. And then the story begins. This is a lot like Afton's Plan style episode, which I'm all for. Theodore lived with his mother as a child and used to be somewhat of a normal person, not insane. His mother tells him not to let people push him around, so when being pressured into joining the bullies to bully Springtrap, he decides to give it a try, which he ends up regretting. Springtrap gets his revenge by burning down his house, which kills his mother, which Theodore says is his only friend. I found it surprising that Theodore and Springtrap's stories are both connected. I like it. This also helps add to Springtrap's character, showing a truly evil man. A wood plank from the fire bonks him on the head, leaving him with brain damage, causing him to go insane. Springtrap then blames Theodore for the fire and his mother's death, most likely framing the fingerprints on the crime scene, and having him put in prison for decades. Theodore has suffered a lot, and his backstory is understandable. El-Chip is put in prison, and Theodore has a one-sided friendship with him. Eventually, we get to the part where El-Chip escapes and betrays Theodore. He then escapes too and goes looking for his enemy Springtrap. He finds his base, and he's revealed to have powers, which Theodore didn't know about. He runs away and finds one of those journals from Springtrap talking about the remnants, and there was talks about a multiverse remnant, which is the most powerful. Theodore wants this remnant so he can be powerful enough to kill Springtrap, and then, as a bonus, he can find another universe to live a better life in. I think this motive is perfect. He researches multiverse remnant for that first year of the apocalypse, and then he finds out the Fazbears ended Springtrap before he could. He spent his whole life wanting revenge and a whole year researching to kill him, and they did it for him. He claims he has no purpose left in his life now, so he decides on getting revenge on the Fazbears, which I still think makes sense. So he works with Walker, which also reveals Walker's motive. I feel like at this point the whole mayor plotline isn't something I really care about right now. So seeing this long scene of him talking about why he did what he did was kind of pointless. But on a good note, I think Walker is a better character after the reveal of him doing all this was for his family. Theodore ends his story and the big plot twist is revealed. That Sharky was actually killed by El-Chip, which is devastating for Toy Bonnie. I think the reveal for this was perfect, and this is a good example of good shocking moment for the series. It made sense and was executed well. Toy Bonnie is angered by this and has El-Chip at gunpoint. Pigpatch stops Toy Bonnie and wants him to hear El-Chip out. Great character moments all around for all three of these guys. We get a lot of small fight scenes with Theodore and the Fazbears and get to see Foxy and Freddy use Super Remnant again. But George Walker made the Remnant, passed it over, and Theodore consumed it. I think they could have done something when Theodore was right in front of their face holding the Remnant, but whatever. Because the next scene was pretty cool. The multiverse gets revealed in the sky. Walker is having second thoughts. And Theodore's about to kill them. And then it cuts. Wow, what an ending. I have no idea what's going to happen in the movie, but I'm so ready for it. This season overall was probably the best one, especially after Volume 2. Theodore's plan was the best out of the Plan episodes, like Fazbear's Plan and Afton's Plan. But this season did a good job at continuing the storyline without needing Springtrap. It really still feels like one huge story, and I like it. This season did well at not copying and pasting the same search for remnant plotlines like Season 3 did, and actually had some great twists and good characters. Overall, this season gets a 9 out of 10. Great job, and I can't wait for that movie.